Amy needs to be there to tell us whether she can hear.
Great. All right. So as I was saying, we are on Beneke land and you can see this at the corner of, at the confluence of the rivers at the old fishing place, which was known as the Monosek. I mispronounced that again. Benmonosek was the name. And you can still see along the edges of Route 5, artichokes and sunchokes growing along the river. And Abenaki people in recent time have gone along there to look at it and to sort of connect with their kin and these plants that are growing along that area. So the Abenaki were there and they still are here today. I'm going to jump us forward to after settlement till after 1761 when the ferry, when the town was chartered in the 1770s, and even through the revolution. I'm jumping you up to this map of 1796. And as I was thinking about what are the big turning points of the village development when there were profound changes, which I think was kind of my charge. It's after this point in 1796. And what you see here in this map is how the earliest settlement happened. And it happened not here in the village. It happened up on Meeting House Hill. And so if you look where the church is showing right here, this is actually Maple Hill Road and Union Village Road. And you'll see the Meeting House Cemetery is here and the meeting house was up there. There was a store up there. There was a road down to the river this way. There was a turnpike or, a major road at that point. The other roads were all going to these mills, which are grist mills and sawmills all along here, up here at Union Village, and down at the confluence of Blood Brook in the Connecticut. And then there were some up here as well. So that was really the center. And the big homes, some of the major homes were in the hills. They were not here. There were a few houses down here. This village area was called Burton's Plain. And it was because the Burtons came and built some of the mills there. They first cleared the land where Fairview Cemetery is. That was some of the very first clearings. And there are really 3 houses in the village area that are the first framed houses that were here during the Revolution. So we have the Hatch Page House, which is Louis Trayman's house as you arrive into town, the Burton House, which is now where the knitting store is, and the Partridge Snell House, which is on the corner of Turnpike and Main. Those are the 3 oldies that saw the Revolution. This one's starting to lose some of its Georgian architectural features pretty over the past years, but you can see how it was looking and how it's looking today. I'm jumping us really quickly to 1824 because the 1820s, I think, are when you really see what their first big moment in this village. And this is a drawing done by a Norwich University student, and I'll zoom us into it. And you can see the Hatch Pipes House here on the far right. You can see the church facing Main Street. This is the very first Norwich University building. Main Street's running along here, and the inn stagecoach stop is down here. So by the 1820s, the village had started to really form down on the plain, on Burton's Plain. And it really is a time when, after the Revolution, you get 20 schools through town with over 700 children under about 8th grade going to school here in town. There are over 2,000 people. It really gets to be peak population. There are 13,000 sheep. They clear all the land you can see forever. And almost immediately it starts to fade. And the fading in some ways saves Norwich because you end up with population fading and growing poverty through the 19th century, and it all kind of just stays here. And sometimes poverty is the best approach to preservation. The population does not reach the same peak until 1980. So this is really a peak time of huge change in the town. And a lot of what you see in the village here today is right from this time. So here's a map from 1856, and this is what they considered to be the village. And so at the top, this house here, right, this is where the Christmas pageant is, the brick house where the final end of the Christmas pageant. You've got Fairview Cemetery coming up what was known as Mechanic Street along here, where there were lots of blacksmiths and wheelwrights and mechanics. And then it went out Elm Street, Colonel Barron, this is the Stetson's house. So that was kind of the end of what they considered to be the village. Messenger is the blue Lily Traven house. So this is really what they consider to be the village by 1856. It's pretty clear. And you can see that Norwich University is really right there in the center of it all. But there's 2 or 3 stores, there's 2 blacksmith shops, there's a hotel, the post office, quite a bit going on in town at this time. And I'm jumping this up because again, nothing happened in Norwich up until later. I'm skipping the Civil War. I'm skipping abolition. I'm skipping all sorts of things because this is about development. And I wanted to take you to this picture of 1889, which is the village before a big fire. So here you can see this was where Danowitz is today. It was a brick building with 3 stores, and above it was Union Hall where they held town meeting. And then this is the inn, which was built originally a federal home by Mr. Murdoch, by Jasper Murdoch. But a lot of these houses you see here are still here today. I mean, this isn't that changed. And I'll switch you over to after the fire. And after the fire, you can see this building here, which is now really, this is the Danowitz building. It became Merrill's store. And then here's the inn, which was built in all its Victorian glory. So, but what you see again are all these same houses. Stetson's are up here. It hasn't changed that much. What has changed is all these outbuildings. Look at all of these farm buildings attached to the back of all these. And when I zoom out, what do you see? But these were all farms. So the center of town had business, and there were blacksmith shops and wheelwright shops and stores, but all the homes had giant farms out the back. So this is this is Norwich, up until World War II, really. We jump further. I love this photo. This shows you behind Main Street. So you've got over here, you have this building here, which is now Marion Cross, but it's the old barracks from Norwich University. And there's the church and Tracy Farm. Here's the Episcopal Church turned facing the green, not Main Street. And then this is the white brick building. That's the parsonage for the church now. The schoolhouse for the district right here, this brick building that's now had the new front put onto it. And then continuing down Main Street. But look at the back again, it's farmland. So I said that the population, as was at its lowest point, was 1920, and it's after World War II in the 50s that you start to see this next. So it's 1820s and the 1950s when suddenly you start to get the infill and the development that we really know Norwich is today. So on the left, you've got Turnpike and the Huntley developments all in here. You've got Hazen Street is built, the Carpenter Street development area, McKenna Road, and all the mid-century modern out Hobson Road. All of that happens in the 50s. Here's a picture of Huntley housing, post-World War II housing for Huntley being built. Now, here's a picture that Bob Parker walked in one day and he handed it to me and said, "Tell me where this is." And it took me a few minutes, but there's the photographer is up on the cliffs looking down on Hazen Street. Here's the libraries over on the right. And this big, huge Hazen barn, that's where that barn was in the center of town. That's where they kept all the snow rollers. That was the town garage in some ways. But you can see Cliff Street being built here. Hazen Street. And the houses starting to start to fill in.
So that would be the 50s?
This is 1959.
Wow.
Yep. And here's same time period. This is Jones Circle. So here we are at Main Street, the Historical Society, the Burton House. This is Southworth's garage back here. And then this whole area back here is what will become Jones Circle. So that starts to fill in the 1950s as well. And that's done with a whole series of modular homes from, what was the name of the company? National Homes, I think, yep. And then we have the mid-century modern area that really expanded, and probably the person who's most, well, one of the people that's responsible for some of this is Keith and Edna Warner, who were a wealthy couple that moved from Florida up here because they wanted a charming college town. They were, he bought a lot of land on spec. He started to subdivide it all up in there. There are lots of houses that all look alike up in there, and he built those on spec. He also subdivided when he died, he subdivided his land, and there are land restrictions about the kind of houses that could be built all in there in terms of how high they can be and the style. That's why the one on the right is new and has that look. There are lots and lots of Dartmouth professors who all settle up in that area. The 1950s is a super interesting time. It's post World War II. There's lots of refugees who are coming in to go to be at Dartmouth, who come here, and there's almost like this Russian German salon going on. In fact, the former chancellor of the Weimar Republic lived here in town. It's a really interesting time period that I'm looking forward to doing more research on. But another important piece that you'll see when we look at this is that when Keith and Edna Warner, when Edna died, she said that they set aside Warner Meadow. And so here's Warner Meadow, and then the research samples woods that come together, and the date for that is 1975. She dies, and this gets set aside. And this is a very interesting piece of property too.
Just a point, because I know that the picture you had before, the house next to the right, the one just to the right, that's where I grew up. And my father was an Estonian who came to be a professor at Dartmouth, so exactly what you just said. But the house to the left, which was Roger Miller and Carolyn Miller, they went and found Mrs. Warner in Florida and said, can the residents around this property buy it?
Got it.
So there was an instigation from a few of the neighbors collecting people, and found her, and she said, okay, and sold it before she died to the neighborhood group.
Interesting. It's also at a time when it's some of the first housing with restrictions here in town too, in this area.
Those restrictions are in deed?
Deed restriction. There's some
Not
deed
in a
restrictions.
housing association,
No,
in deeds.
And deeds. And so I did a whole talk on Warner Meadow, which you can find on our website. It's recorded, that really talks about this from the glacial time through to the present, and looks at what's going on here in terms of the environmental piece, as well as and some of the challenges there are maintaining that meadow. I'll just point out Huntley Field, another big open space in our village area. And maybe most of you know that it used to be a mink farm. And there's pictures of the mink farm that was from 1947 to 1964. After the mink farm, the Huntleys then set aside this land and sold it to the school. They thought the school might be built there, but it did not, obviously. Another development during this time is Hawk Pine. This is the late 60s. It was the Hawk Mountain Corporation. They had other developments around Vermont as well. So all of this is happening 50s, early 60s. But let's jump forward a little bit. And I'll say that one way to see big changes in a community too is through the schools, right? And so one of the first big addition to that 4-room school of Marion Cross was 1951, when the last 1-room schoolhouse closed. They finally had buses. There were hardly any kids in the final 4 1-room schools, and they put an addition on. In 1960, they put on another 6-room addition to respond to the continued population growth. And then the next big addition, 1995. It's right after DHMC opens. And the nineties is my third time when I feel like Norwich has a change. And so, senior housing, this is actually 1981, so I'm a little out of order, but here's the senior housing, which was initiated by the Congregational Church, St. Francis, Barnabas, and the United Methodist. So the churches came together to pull together Norwich senior housing. And when we jump there, here's the Burton House before it's the big changes are made. You can see over on the left, the brick post office that was there. Here's behind the Burton House, there was the flower shop and the jug shop in the back, that was all there. And here is it all torn out and then starting to build what we now is Norwich Square. With this addition on the back. You know, it was a time, I think it was a vulnerable time in the community. I don't know, I guess I was here in the nineties, now that I think about it, but I wasn't as aware of it. But, you know, it's a time when a lot of things could have gone in a different way. And instead, they, you know, created Norwich Square that was sympathetic to the architecture and to the space. And probably one of the most important things they did was fight to keep the post office in town. And so there's the post office right here. And there was a chance that was going to go out on Route 5. And it didn't. And instead, of course, it went over into the carriage house area here. And keeping the post office in town is a piece that kept people coming into town and keeping this a vibrant village center. You know, I think we have to watch that too, in terms of with our changing post office situation with our federal government and planning. Here's another dramatic photograph from the 1990s. The inn started to be restored in 1991. And there's my favorite photo of the cupola going on the tower going on the top. And I'll also add the library had their addition at this time. I mean, it was just a real time of additions. I know there's some other areas that you all are looking at for the town plan, including Lewiston. So here's Lewiston at the turn of the century. And this is a wonderful photo because it shows you a couple of things. There's the covered bridge. Here are all those cliffs going up into Hanover where they're building all the dorms right now. And the river was much narrower. This is before the dams. Once the dams went in, it widened dramatically, and a bunch of Lewiston was lost just from the building of the dams. But it was a full town. There were stores. There was a big grain silo, which is still there. You've got the Norwich Depot. You've had railroads going, but trains going five times a day back and forth to White River. People could hop on the train, go to the movies, and come home. Here we are, with it being demolished in 1967 to make way for the new interchange. And here's the new interchange. And I had to put in the Norwichites protesting because there was, you know, there was a lot of discussion. There was no listserv, but there are plenty of newspaper articles, I can tell you. And the road really was really changed dramatically too, because it used to go, you can see it here, the road into town went around this curve like this and then up. So you can still walk this, I think, but the entry into town was quite a bit different. And I just add this in to see Norwich Meadows, King Arthur Flower, the Colton Center, all these came in after the interchange. So with the expansion along Route 5, there's Southwest Garage. He moves out of the center of town down to where the car store was, and now the co-op store. That's 1973. The farmer's market is 1977. And Killdeer Farm is 1977 also. So the 70s, right then, it starts to, it's really after the interchange is finished that you start to see some of that growth right along that edge of Route 5. And then King Arthur, of course, has its big campus expansion in 95. So we're back to the 90s again. So this also happened in the 90s. The bridge was also rebuilt. That's 1999. And the transfer station, 1990. So nineties is, again, many changes, many new committees in town, being formed, to work with all of this. And I'll just end quickly with this population, chart, which I kind of ran through with you. You start with just 40 families right before the revolution, and it zooms way up with all these people moving in. The sheep boom, the town just flourishes, and we end up with the village we have. And then through the 19th century, it just diminishes. And then it's really in the 50s, 60s, you start to see it start to pop up again. And then there's the school change, and then in the 90s, the school changes again. And then I'll finally just end by saying, let's all remember that there's also a real wealth of information about these buildings in our town. And the entire village area is on the National Register, and the Mid-Century Modern, which also falls within the village, is on the National Register as well, with really well documented information about the histories of all of these buildings. And I urge us all to just remember, when we all think about what is Norwich, we envision, when we think about it, we think about not only this beautiful landscape, but we think in the environment, but we think about these buildings and this historic character to it, and understanding what makes a village have an identity, I think is really important as we move forward. I think we were lucky in the 90s that people really thought about, keeping an identity there, because there was a lot of change, and preservation was clearly on people's minds. And I think we want to continue to just think through some of those pieces as we move forward. I said that poverty can often, keep preserved buildings, but a lot of wealth can also be a challenge for preservation, because people have the money to just, completely change, gut houses or change pieces, and then we lose some of those character pieces. And I don't know how we balance moving forward with preservation and that historic piece, but I think we've got to be thinking about that as we move forward. So there's my pitch for that. And I'll end with that for you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it just one question?
Yeah.
So what has changed since the mid-90s? Mid to late 90s in this sequence? Is it valid to say we've been somewhat status quo since then?
I feel like it. I don't know what the other people would say, but it feels a bit like that.
Huh.
I mean, I don't see
Yeah.
massive, I think there's some vulnerabilities in the community right now, the Grange, yay, but, but, I think Dana Witz is, vulnerable. The post office, I don't know what the status is, but, there are just some pieces that I think, there are vulnerabilities, but I don't feel like I've seen massive change since the 90s, but
So I think that's a good entry
Route
point
5.
for this group to say, here we are 30 years into a stable period.
Mhm.
Let's be conscious and think about it and look at it and really get the town involved, because it's sort of like a tectonic plate that hasn't moved for 30 years, we need to manage it, because change, if change is gonna happen, let's do it consciously. And that's a good thing to realize.
Yeah, I think the other big change that I didn't really mention, but you mentioned to me the other day, was the real shift in downtown from all these houses being farms and families to being businesses. And so, all these buildings along Main Street used to all be homes, or that's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, I said,
please.
Yeah.
please, my name's Jonathan, first day, 1249 in Boston Road. I lived here in 85 to 88, and then since 94, I've been here. And it seems like there are small incremental little changes, like, the side road at Marion Cross, Now paved. The green didn't have a fence. Well, the first group. Main Street paved a little bit more. And so there are little things like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that do add up at some point.
yeah,
I think that's a really important point, that little, and suddenly they add up, they do add up, like, I think there was it was a big change in the nineties. But all those little things without being part of a plan, suddenly, it can morph into something maybe one doesn't want or
Hmm.
does want, so.
We don't have the swimming hole anymore,
There's also been
Oh, yeah, yeah,
which is really depressing.
yeah.
It wasn't in the village section, so I didn't put it, it's on your timeline now, I was like, I had to put that on there.
All
So,
right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's
You're welcome.
what we needed to have us understand our task here.
excellent,
Now,
best wishes as you move forward,
Thanks.
if we can help in any way, let me know.
if you wanna make sure we're recording, so forth.
Yes, we are recording.
We're recording. It's
Apologies.
The same number, well, and I don't think, Gene, are you gonna use slides? Or you gonna? Okay, so we don't have to worry about visible slides.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, everyone. This is, we are the Norwich Village Master Plan Steering Committee. And Gene can probably tell us what the word master and master plan means, just so we can understand. We could probably shorten that if we wanted to. But this group, it's a group of 11 of us, and tonight's kickoff is really to let us get to know each other and get to know what we signed up for and answer questions and kind of have a conversation that kicks off the activity. We'll start with some background we'll start with introduction. Then Stephen will give us kind of regulatory geographic planning dimensions of it. Gene has a lot of experience in this sort of thing and can get us to understand village plans and steering committees. This group is an advisory committee to the planning commission. We are a creature of the planning commission. So just keep that in mind. And then I will go through really the work plan. What does it look like? What does this task look like going out to completion, but mostly the detail at the front end. So we know what we're trying to do over the next few meetings. Okay? Now for introductions, rather than do the, I'm so-and-so from this locatable address, we thought it would be a little more interesting and appropriate because one of the main purposes of this group is to engage the community and pull information and sort of value statements and priorities out of the community. So we might as well start off ourselves by doing that. So that's why we stuck that question in the agenda, which was, what do you value about the village today? And the 2 points that are important to that, for the sake of just 2-minute introductions, is it's a positive. What do you value? Not what do you want to change? What drives you nuts? No, it's a positive thing and it's in the present. It's not, oh, I'd love to see this in the future. That we're going to talk about that a lot, but just for today's 2 minutes go around, it's in the present and something you value. And just to kick that off, I will start, and then we can go around. So I would say we live a little ways out of town. And so it's wonderful and quiet and nature. And when you come to town, we come and walk the loop virtually every day. It's a couple things. One, it's the right level of activity. It's like not too busy, not too much traffic or noisy, but it's vibrant. It is, you see people, you meet people, you talk to people, the kids are on the playground, we see the grandchildren on the playground. So it feels like a good level of activity. And then it's beautiful. it's aesthetically pleasing. The historic buildings, the big trees, it's pretty to walk around, and that's something that I definitely value. And then just to throw another one in, can't help it, the baseball games at Huntley Meadow are, a real treat, and last night's was particularly good, where extra innings and we won the championship over Hanover. But nothing better than June evening at Huntley watching youth baseball. So,
Hi, everyone. I'm Alec Ornstein. I would say, something I value about the village is just how when I go to pick up my kids at school, I don't want to leave. I just want to hang out. I want to see their friends, my friends. We're in no rush to leave. And I just like how it's sort of just central meeting place. I think the school plays a huge role in that. But, it seems like where everybody's just hanging out, and we just hang out until we have to go home and think dinner. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
I have more, but I think we should.
That's a great statement. I'll concur with that. So, I'm Brendan Klassen. I do a few gigs around town, so you may have seen me, heard of me, recognized me. My wife and I moved here ostensibly for retirement 5 years ago. I did some back and forwards to California, but retired 3 years ago. I didn't know how much Norwich had to offer me. We kind of moved here on a bit of a whim. And there's this fundamental tenet of human behavior called the call and response. And I think I was not aware of my call for belonging in a community and the need for that. And I landed here and I put out the call, and boy, did I get a response. And the like-mindedness, the return gestures, that's what Norwich means to me. It's not the buildings or the trees or the sidewalks or whatever, it's the people. It's the continuing, the population fluctuates, demographics change. We're a wealthy town, but we're a really good town, and it's just so good to be here. So my fundamental feeling is the people, the community, and sort of the infrastructure and stuff is part of it, but it's more secondary.
Andy Torkelson. We're all going to start echoing all the things, but it's like an Eden. It's a beautiful place. My wife and I moved here in 1980, and so we've been here a long time. We built two different homes. Our starter home and then our second home, which we've been in since 1988. We love the community, the school. You know, our two daughters graduated. In fact, one of our daughters is moving back in August with her two children. So it brings people back and brings people together, and also the hiking trails. So it's all that. Those are where my values are.
Jess Phelps. We moved here about 7 years ago. We wanted to be in sort of a rural town that had character and had just a more livable scale. And that's, I think, something we value about this town. It's just our kids' ability to have the freedom to wander around, to drive the librarians nuts after school every day, and just have a really rich place that they can kind of grow up in. And it's very special that way.
It's great. Stephen True, I'm the planning director for the town. And, you know, I've worked in a number of municipalities across the state, and, you know, they're all have their own character, and interesting things about them. And there's kind of three things I noticed almost immediately about Norwich. One is, just the number of people out on the streets in the evening. You know, it's really true. There's people who are, you know, taking these journeys of community, and I really, you know, I noticed that immediately. The second thing was the sort of, the youth in our local government. You know, that's a really interesting characteristic. I do not see that across the state. I never have, and I really appreciate that. I mean, I think it says a lot about the community. And the third thing, and I guess this is kind of frank, but you know, the local government here, but, well, I mean, it's a bit unique. I mean, I haven't really, you know, one of my wishes is to, you know, see how we can strengthen, the community through this process, local government through this process, and, you know, really just, you know, sort of build consensus, you know, so I'm excited to, take this journey with you guys.
I'll introduce myself when it gets to be my talk.
My name is Christian Spalding. I live on Church Street here in town, towards Willingham. For me, I've been here about 5 years now. For me, the big thing is there's been a major turnover in the neighborhood that we live, like Carpenter Street to Church Street around the school. There's just a lot of young families. We have like a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. It's really like what I grew up in. It's like every weekend night. It's just like big social get-togethers, people walking home. There's kids out riding their bikes. Whether it's we all walk up to T-ball on Saturday morning at the same time. It's just like this like good sense of community, and it's really it seems to be new. It was not, and at least in this pocket of town, it wasn't here even in 2021 when we moved here. So it's like that new, but it's really refreshing. We see a lot of the same faces and people at school, at town hall, and we vote. Like the post office, we turn to a lot of positive people. So that's it for me.
I'm Cole Flannery. I live out in West Norwich on Stagecoach Road, so very much not in the village. I do own the beer and wine store in town now, so I have that perspective, being a small business owner here and those challenges. Lived in the Upper Valley in the early 2000s in Sharon and Royalton, Tunbridge line, so I've been in a couple different towns around. And I would say that for me, what I like most about sort of the village in Norwich for sure is that it's pretty much anchored by the school and like kids and like youth. So you don't get that in every town in Vermont for sure. And I think it's pretty unique for us that a lot of sort of what happens kind of revolves around that green and that school. So that's what I enjoy, especially having 2 kids there. So
I'm Lucinda Walker. I'm the director of the library. I don't live in Norwich. I live in Brownsville, and I grew up in Windsor. So for me, I've been here about it'll be 24 years next Monday that I've been here. I feel like I spend a lot of my time here, so this has become sort of my secondary hometown. And what I truly love about it is the walkability. I love that people are out on the street and I can see people and chat with people, and I see Jan and Amy almost every day on their walk. I have seen sort of a big transfer to younger families coming in, so I feel like I've seen a generational shift in my time here, and it's always, I think, exciting and nerve-wracking to see what those changes look like. During the pandemic, some people came into the library and were like, things are changing. And I was like, isn't it great? Look at new people mean new energy, meaning like they come and serve on commissions and steering committees and stuff. But I've really always thought that driving into Norwich really helped me being in Brownsville, where it's not so big. This feels like my big town. And I really love it. I see it as a big town. It's not Hanover where you dressed up when I was a kid to go to Hanover, but it's maintained its small town feeling, but I feel like there's so many options available and people who live in town who make it feel like a bigger town. And I mean that in the best possible way. Yeah.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. So what we want to do tonight is really just be able to answer questions, have it so that when you leave, you've got a pile of stuff you get to take with you that Stephen compiled, example plans and so forth. So you're coming in, one assumes, with, you know, what is the village master plan? How are we gonna do it? How much effort is it gonna take? Which pieces do we do? Which pieces does Stephen do, or someone else, or consultants? So that's the kind of stuff we're gonna try and start the conversation. But it's definitely a conversation, so ask questions, jump in, and we'll do Stephen, then Gene, then me, and go back and forth as needed.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you guys for, being here. I really appreciate it. I do want to draw your attention to the, two project maps we have up here. I'm sure members of the planning commission will recognize that the area that we've demarcated, is in line with the regional plan's future land use map. So this yellow area, sort of in the region recognized as. What's that?
Baltic Banner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the slightly yellower portion.
So we're at 257 Hartford Town Line,
Yep,
and then Hudson Road.
out to the transfer station.
Out, oh yeah, so you're out this far, so the limit is transfer station. In Harley Meadow, Route 5 South to the river,
Yeah,
Kenna, Lewiston, and then out. And it does include also the Zone 5.
so that, I think the planning commission members will recognize that as a future land use area. I think the rest of you will recognize that it's a very large area, and I think the sort of intention, of the planning commission was to, try to encompass not only the sort of traditional historical understanding of, a main street, but also the areas in which, people congregate, and sort of move in between, in the course of, their lives. So, Huntley Meadows, the green, the area behind King Arthur, there's, so essentially the village area, the intent is to sort of capture, everywhere we're congregating.
Can I interrupt,
Sure.
ask a question? So who drew the lines? Because I'm gonna be talking about boundary lines. I mean, did the planning commission volunteer?
It was a
for it, or was it
combination.
regional planning?
Both, so it was a combination of the planning commission and the regional commission. So the regional commission came in and said, oh, the state has standardized these land use, names. So village area or village center, it means something they didn't used to. So they came with, here are the categories we want to use. And certain specific things like your housing target needs to fit a certain, you have to have enough area to meet a
So you-
certain amount of housing target. So you couldn't, if you had said it was only this big, the regional commission would have said, no, make it big enough to do X, Y, Z. And then that distinction between village center and village area allows you to, so village center is really the core, and then village area includes the periphery.
Yeah.
And so we chose in doing this master plan grant application to use the bigger footprint, the area, village area, not just the center. And so one of the, I think Gene will touch on it, and really what we were thinking was the beginning of the next meeting, when we really try to dig into things, that's gonna be one of the first questions, is the boundary, and then what are the satellites? What are the satellite areas in that area? So, down the farmer's market is a satellite to the green. Say, if you take Tracy and the green and the school as the Dana Witz, the Grange, that's the core village center. And then Huntley is basically a satellite. It's far enough away and it has its own thing. Route 5 South. And then what are the other ones? Which ones may be latent and we want to try and pull them out? Which ones are already there and we want to build?
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
Dresden Fields, for example.
Dresden Fields out there, McKenna Road. That was fascinating. Just the fact that Lewiston, because I've always wondered, how did Lewiston have such a life of its own? That's because it was way bigger.
It's twice the size. Yeah,
But they dammed it up.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it was a combination, but it was planning commission and regional commission.
Yeah, and I mean, I think infrastructure is a really important part of planning. It's sort of, it's something that's, easily capitalized. It's, really the sort of the foundation of the sort of quality of life that a town can offer. And, I just sort of want to, run through, what sort of, existing conditions in the project area. So there's 344 single-family homes with 64 multifamily homes. There's 24 commercial buildings in the downtown area. We have almost 20 miles of paved roads in this area, 4.7 miles of unpaved roads, 7 miles of trails that have been built, almost 12 miles of stormwater facilities, culverts and, drainage, 334 stormwater drains, 53 hydrants. All of this infrastructure, is sort of critical to the operation of the town. And I think, as a planning group, we always need to be sort of mindful of these capital investments. And, make sure that, we're directing them in a way that, achieves the vision that we have for the town. There's 300, almost 300 acres of parking coverage in the town. So, I mean, these are all kind of surprising numbers. At least they were to me. So, yeah, I wanted to, sort of share that with you guys. In my mind, infrastructure is, an important foundation of, any plan, and we need to be sort of cognizant of that. Also, Mary Gorman.
Hi. Okay.
Yeah, no, please.
Barry is a member of the planning commission, and that we usurped the planning commission's regular night. And part of the reason we did that was to encourage other planning commission members to attend. So if they were,
And presumably fresh off a plane.
and so, yeah, as like I said, this is definitely, it's actually in the grant that every planning commission meeting has a standing agenda item to talk about village master plan project. So this is very much an active element of the planning commission's work. And so we thank all of you who aren't on the planning commission for augmenting our efforts by doing this. But I did to say follow up on what Stephen was saying, when you start listing infrastructure and sidewalks and stormwater and so forth, one of the things that we will talk about shortly in this first block of work is what background data we need to do our job. And it doesn't mean we personally have to go collect it all, but what is it that we need? And you'll see in some of the example plans where it's a fabulous compilation of just those kinds of things. How many houses, how much sidewalk, what's the condition of the sidewalk, what's the traffic? So that's all background that this group will list. Here's the background information we need to do the plan.
Yeah, and I just think it's important to keep those structural elements in mind as we go through this sort of visioning process. But yeah, so that's the project area. I think, we put a lot of thought into it, and it's a large area, but I think it really accurately represents what we all sort of imagined this village to be. So yeah, Jean, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, I don't live in Norwich, so that's why I didn't want to do my introduction at that time. Although I know that, let's see, I know that Andy and I met and worked together on some things years ago. So I'm originally from Northern England, and I went to the Town and Country Planning Institute for a while there in Britain. So I had my first land use planning and zoning training back in 1962. I'm positively ancient. And I've done, I came to the United States, because it's the, best place to be, as one thought in those days. Scared now as an immigrant, but they may not deport me. And I've done a lot of international research, over the last, 50, 60 years, on a range of topics. My background is sort of unusual. I have a PhD in what is essentially ecology, biogeography, so soils, vegetation, environment, all those kinds of good things, and some pure science. PhD on pecans, which makes me an expert in so many things. And then I read law in Vermont, postdoctoral. And that was, of course, a very useful thing to do, because it's allowed me to. I was one of those few people that really understood both science and law in going through and working with land use planning and development over decades. So I taught research methods and environmental studies and environmental law at UVM for most of my typical career period. Then I went into consulting, and while I was at UVM, I got a big grant from the Kellogg Foundation, and this is my show and tell book, Jean's sweet little book. It's a bit out of date now, but I did bring a copy to leave with Stephen if anyone wants to read it, because I wrote it, it was published 25 years ago, so it's a bit out of date, but it includes a lot of stuff in it that you might find interesting as you're trying to decide what's more important, schools, environment, walking, I'm hearing all these things. And there's key principles of rural community development, for example. It's kind of a checklist of things, because what you're going to be doing over the next few months, you'll get all the numbers. Well, there'll be masses and masses of numbers, which will sort of drown you. But in many ways, what you will find as you go through trying to write, or the request for proposal, which you're going to work on, you'll find it's the process that's almost more important than the output that comes out of this initial phase. It's getting to know each other, asking all the questions, noticing the commonality that's coming out, and then working out how to get what you want in your town, and not have the state and the planners and the expert from out of town telling you what to do, because it's for you and for your, for this next generation. So there's useful sort of ideas in here. And it includes some of the comments that Sarah was saying. What we found in doing a lot of this research, where we're trying to get people to work together on a wide range of topics, wide range of backgrounds, we found that those towns that lost the schools, around the country, they just died. The schools that lost the post office, the very things Sarah was talking about, identifying the key things which are important to your town center and building around those. It's not only the right thing to do, it's the logical thing to do. It's just what's in, just the eloquent way in which you were describing what it is you wanted to do. And then, of course, I've been a volunteer for 40 years, on all the various committees. I'm on the Planning Commission in Ferrisburg. I was previously on Planning Commission up in Fairfield, where I live, and written several town plans and lots of zoning ordinances, and had quite a lot of interesting interactions with regional planning, both good and not so good. So, which I want you to understand and work with, because I don't want you to get bullied by changes in the state law or what you're being told by the qualified planners that'll be talking to you. It's not to say that they're wrong. It's just that if you want the town to go on being the way you'd like it to be, taking control of the process is going to be really important to do. So what's our goal over the next few months? Hopefully it'll go by quickly and be great fun. We're going to prepare a scope of work which will go to a different consultant group. There'll be the true expert planners, who'll be doing the charrettes and showing you all kinds of numbers and data and things, but they too won't be Norwich people. So your guidance is going to be important in drafting the RFP. And I'll give you an idea of what an RFP will look like in a few minutes, just toward the end of what I'm going to be talking about. But your scope of work that you're going to be hopefully being able to do relatively efficiently will really be for you to be doing a lot of the groundwork that only you can do because you're the locals. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, I sound like a broken record, but it's just based on experience, because otherwise you'll just get something that'll, a study that'll go into a drawer and no one will see it again. And we don't want that to happen. So, so if by doing what we're doing for these next few weeks, it'll save you time and money, because there's also only a limited budget, which I think is part of the package that is on your table there. That this grant that Stephen got
Very
for you.
limited budget.
It's a very limited budget, so I'm the cheap part of your budget here. So you're gonna provide a framework for the village plan. So I brought, and here in your package for you to look at, show it out. Pull out this handy dandy document you have. We're gonna look just for a minute too at these two. These are finished master plans. You're not gonna be writing this today, or these two. There's one that's Springfield, mine's in color, but yours is in black and white.
I had to save the printer.
Saving money on the printer. So there's,
900.
so this is the kind of document that your next set of consultants will generate for you. Based on what you ask them to do. So, and it's filled with maps, datas, layouts. This is one of the best in the state, Springfield's. Which is one that Steve and I thought would be the most useful one for you to look at as an end product, which will happen when, at the end of next year, right? Basically.
More, yeah, I think what it shows up is in the February, March time. Right?
Yeah, first quarter.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, right,
Yeah.
next year, right,
Yeah.
that's pretty quick. So it's got a huge amount of information in here. And you're gonna be taking this home and studying it out before the next meeting. There won't be a test, but we do want you to be sure that you do in fact look at all of these documents that we're gonna be giving you. And like the beginning part. See, this is the one I wanted to focus over here, which was the page that we thought was most useful. Well, it includes all the historic stuff like Sarah did here this evening. And it goes through looking at existing conditions and gives you a pretty good understanding of what it is you want the town to look like. And so you can study the beginning part of it to see what it is. So there's sorts of questions that were being asked at the community meetings, which you're really part of these community meetings right now. But this is a very big study. This would have been an extremely expensive study. You're not gonna have as much money to get this type of end project. How much should we guess that this?
Oh, 60, 70, 80,000.
Somewhere up around $60,000. You don't have that much money. You might get something that's somewhat smaller. This is one that I'm presently on a steering committee for in Ferrisburgh for Jens. This is a focused example of coming up with how to do a master plan for a very specific area. So this one is focused on transportation and development. The Springfield one is everything. It's like a catalog of absolutely everything. And it's to give a big picture kind of a development. This green covered one that you've got here, this includes right up front an executive summary, which I think gives you a very good idea of the kind of thing that goes into the kind of goals that came out of your introductions that give rise to describing the end of the conversation, what it is that we came up with, which we thought was really important. Because this transit-oriented development master plan, it focused entirely on transit. Can we get buses and trains around the Amtrak station and get housing development around it? So it was an answer to the call from the state in Act 181, which was to say, we want to have so many houses put in this area, for better or for worse, even though our town of Ferrisburgh, we have neither water nor sewer. So how we're supposed to do that, heaven only knows, which is one of the things that we had to discuss with both the state and the regional planning folks. But whereas on the other side of the boundary there for Jens, it's clear it's a bigger town. It's got water and sewer, both of which were basically built in the 1890s, and neither of them work very well. So, but still, we have this, and those are the kinds of things that we began to develop and work on, looking for what it is that we want to achieve. Yes, we did want housing, and we wanted them in these areas to look like this, and we wanted to have a focus on some commercial development around the railway station. So it had a mix of some commercial and housing, but built around the idea of that it would be walkable, or, you know, it would be environmentally good, all those good things. And yet, and it would achieve the goals of the state and of the two towns involved, town of the city of Vergennes and the town of Ferrisburgh. So it was focused around a topic. So you might want to focus your plan around the very things that obviously are extremely important here, especially the schools and the walking. I mean, all the time I've been coming up and down to Norwich, this has been the kind of thing people's always talked about. You could in fact focus it, which make it easier for you to ask all of your questions around that one topic as you go through. How are we going to encourage the people to collect the right information and come up with something that you like.
And if I could just add, I think another reason that we found this Vergennes Ferrisburgh plan to be so helpful in this situation is because it actually does focus on zoning regulations, you know, which is a point that we may want to consider getting to in this town plan. Because we have, I think there's a very comprehensive sort of understanding of, or commonality anyway, around walkability, around, just the center of town. So I think its focus on zoning regulations as, as a goal, is an interesting aspect of the plan.
It doesn't mean you have to write them, but that you would identify that these would be useful. So if you, for example, you want to say, we want to work out how to have better historic preservation in terms of retaining buildings, or one of the comments that came up before we started the meeting was, how do we set aside some money to make sure, or find money that will allow us to renovate old barns so we don't lose the history of the town, and instead turn those barns into living accommodation, apartment blocks, for example. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is it's going to be a public process. There's going to be charrettes, which just means pretty pictures, and you have to say which ones you like the best, so to speak. But it's also going to help you think about capital planning. And I can't remember, do you have a capital budget in Norwich? No. And that will be one of the things that I guarantee you're going to identify you need. And so keep that in the back of your mind. Capital planning. That's
just, if I may, to put this in context, one of the things that, this is a feeder, it's also kind of a prototype and training run for the full town plan. The Norwich town plan is due to be rewritten in 28. That's when it to be done.
Adopted.
And that's comprehensive, so that's out into the rural areas, that's everything. And so the idea is both content of what's going on in the village and what are the priorities and how does that all work. That's the content of the work we're doing here, and the process of getting groups together, getting public feedback, understanding the state and regional side of things. We're kind of practicing with the village, and then we will expand it into the town plan. And that helps us we will plug into a bigger picture. And then other things plug into this, where we have a grant to do scoping on bike head connection, Route 5 South to the village. So we take that as a exercise and plug that into this activity. So there are a variety of pieces that, and again, the planning commission as the overseeing body will help make sure those pieces fit together and we're making the best use of it. But this group's work is in that larger context.
Right, I mean, currently at the town plan, 2020 town plan identifies 4 planning areas. The village being one of them. And it doesn't, it sort of separates Route 5 South as a sort of mixed use commercial district. The rest being sort of rural residential. So, I mean, we're expanding on one planning area in the, looking to the future where we'll sort of do this for the rest of them.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying here. So what you're going to be doing with the request for proposals will be sort of the foundation for it. Your end product will allow you to be much more competitive for grants, as Jan was saying. And your work, even for the RFP, I'd like you to work hard to think of the challenges that you have in town. What are the challenges that you have to deal with? I've heard, oh, the sidewalks falling apart. We need to have money for that, which would say it would be a capital project. What are the challenges? Because out of each challenge comes then the opportunity. So you say, this is a challenge. But is sewer a problem? It may be or it may not be. I know, by the way, you don't have Wi-Fi. I mean, and you don't have good cell phone service. Or if you're on Verizon, doesn't work here at all. Anyway, so just so you know. So your job is to really do homework after you've gone out of here today. Look at all the stuff that we're giving you, and I'll look at some more numbers with you in a minute or two. And as you go around town, start jotting down what's good, what's a challenge, because out of that challenge, you as a group will then identify the opportunity. And you're going to be giving all of this data and narrative to the consultants before they start giving you a cookie cutter. So you'll be in charge of your own narrative. And you'll be proposing some goals, some policies, and some recommendations for implementation. And these are the kinds of things that are in here that you can look at. What's the goal? Okay, what are we going to do to do it? Do something better about it. One of the things that we had identified was that we had to expand the authority of the zoning administrator. And it's like, oh my God, I don't know about that. Share a zoning administrator with the next town over. So those were things for us to think about as to whether or not we wanted to do stuff like that. So try to think outside the box on what you're doing. But most of all, what you're going to be doing over the next few weeks is really capacity building. It's learning to listen to each other, and not just listen to Jean talking like this, but to work together, ask each other questions, and see what you can do to interact with all of your networks that you're part of. You're part of networks. If you're being asked to do this, here's what we're working on. What do you think? And you'll be amazed the kind of feedback you'll get from people that have lived here a short while or a long time. Property owners, businesses, non-profit organizations, people in other parts of many of you live in the village area, it sounds like, but try to make sure you talk to people that are around the rest of the town. So getting to know each other and then asking the right questions. One of the things I started to do to ask some questions about Windsor is on this sheet that I printed out for you yesterday or the day before. It's darn interesting. You're so different from my town. I mean, you're a different place altogether. Median age is young. Median age is only 40. Why do they come here? The schools. Everybody comes here because of the fabulous schools, as I sort of interpret this thing. Pretty much a white town. Half and half women, that's both good. Median household income is nearly double the amount of the rest of Windsor County. So it's a relatively wealthy town, and when you begin to sort of analyze the data, you begin to notice that there isn't a large middle class or working class population that seems to be living in town anymore. Or maybe I'm misreading the data here. Because there's a low poverty amount, a small number of people under poverty, and the what was my other data in here? The number of that was probably another source I got that from. The number of, yeah, very few children are being born in town, right? But you've got about, let's see, the birth rate is about 2/5 of the rate of Vermont. It's quite low.
Is that skewed by the hospital being across the river?
There wasn't data to necessarily suggest that. I got the feeling that people moved to town when they had young kids.
I see.
Kids were already born when they came here.
Hmm.
Right? Or did you come here with kids?
We didn't, but, so I don't know about that. I know that the pre-K and kindergarten classes have exploded here
Yes.
in
Right.
the last 2 or 3 years. Like they
Right.
went from, I don't know, 14 or 16 to like 30 something, having a hard time fitting.
Right. Yeah,
But I don't know how many of those per teacher.
yeah, it's just sort of fascinating. And the household numbers, they're pretty much average, really, 2.6 persons per household. What was the other things here was interesting? Oh, yeah, the median value of houses is, that's probably gone up in the last few weeks as we speak, but the median value is like 637,500 for owner occupied houses, which is high. Our town has just got reassessed and everything just doubled. Hadn't been assessed for like 9 years. Quite scary.
We recently reassessed it.
Is it assessed here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so yours might be realistic numbers.
And 9 years as well.
That's typical.
Geographical mobility was interesting. People who've moved in the previous year, about 1.5 times the rate of the rest of Windsor County. So you have a fluid piece of population. coming in. One school they go. That's right, that's right, exactly. So, I mean, this is just a sort of a snapshot of sort of information to look at. But it's data for you to think about because you've got many rural towns, you've just got a bunch of old folks and then the rest are just, they're commuting, rural town. They're all commuting out somewhere else. And that doesn't seem to come out of your data. Now I haven't looked at the data that would say what everybody's jobs are, but they're probably not all in town, but they're relatively close.
So within
Is what
20
the data
minutes,
says. Within
I
20
think
minutes.
according to the data.
According to the data, that was right. Yeah, that's right. The data does say you're all very, very close. So it is
I don't know what the traffic's like on Ledger Bridge in the morning.
I can't imagine. So,
So I'm interested, this
Yeah.
is, it says ACS 2024 5-year unless noted, so this would be back to 2019.
yes, the data goes back to 2019. It was the
Right, so this-
foundation.
This would encompass the pandemic,
Yes, right.
the
Yeah,
tumultuous, the influx of 14,000 people to the state
right.
during the pandemic,
Yeah,
and some of them landed here,
right.
ourselves included.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
All right. You came during pandemic. Yeah.
Me too.
Oh, you too.
Yeah,
Well,
as did our
Oh,
daughter
okay, so
moving
that
back.
is
Yeah.
I
interesting.
think 88 families total came in.
Is that right? 88 families.
That's
came
the
here.
number I was told, yeah, 88.
That's a lot.
That's a lot in a 2-year period.
Yeah.
It is.
It's huge.
So I just wanna point out a general statement here that's coming up so that we can have it in mind. We should be all listing what we want to know. Well, it would be, is 88 the right number?
Yeah,
Let's
right, yeah.
confirm that. Somebody jots down, oh, how many families moved here? What is the data that we need to do our job? And because that's a list that we wanna be compiling. Because and that's the point too, when we do an RFP for the consultant, we want, part of that, we're gonna hand them that list, or we're gonna at least divvy up the list to the right people to. And so, but clearly that is a subset of our task here is to just ask, it's part of asking the right question.
So the next
What
section on
is-
here is asking the right question. See, we're so.
Yeah, we're
it's
good.
young. So I'm gonna read out some of the questions that I invented.
Did you pass, was that in the package?
No, I was,
For no.
oh, no, they're just, okay,
It's on
But
the
I-
screen behind. for
Okay.
what it's worth.
Okay.
That was the question.
But if you find this sexy, I will send it to you. Though, so here's just an initial set of ideas that I came up with that you might want to think about. So what do each member of this committee see as 20 years down the road? I mean, we couldn't anticipate COVID, but who knows what, 10 years down the road, you think
Yeah,
it's better?
I mean,
Okay.
the lifetime of our next town plan.
Okay. Will you be living in Norwich? And I really want you to think about that. Will you be living here? Or can you afford it? Didn't ask that question. And will you be living in the village center or somewhere else? And why? Or why not? So, because you're in this story. We're not just doing something that's bricks and mortars or a piece of paper. It's all about the humans that make this place so good to live in. What are the boundaries of the village area that you selected? And why? It seems big to me, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it seems like it's more than one thing there. I mean, I see a core and then I see housing areas, so to speak, residential areas. So I see it more, I worry about it being that big if you end up choosing exactly that. Could it be a core with satellites? Could trails be something that join them together? So if you identify, I know Steve has some ideas of thematic concepts you might think about. Could these be joined by walking trails? Would proper walking trails make a difference? Right. I mean, people complain about the sidewalk. Jan was complaining about sidewalks walking around the other week here. Because remember, each time you ask these things, which are both challenges and opportunities, that questions that you're asking, if you clearly write about them, you can get money to fix them. Because you'll have the power by saying, no, here's what we found, here's what to do. And you make them small enough so they just look like little grants, and we have little incremental things happening. It's not some ginormous thing that requires you to hire someone to run it. You can run it yourself. Where do you really want to see new housing? Because that's what the state's pushing us all to do. They want this chock-a-block with houses. Is that what you want? Do you have enough houses for people who can't afford to spend $637,000 on a house? No, probably not, because we certainly don't. And so if you want them, where do you want these houses to be? And if you look at your town plan, I noticed when I read your town plan, it has a huge amount on housing that's actually quite useful and educational for you to look at. But I know that you're going to want to show on your the final big document at the end, you're going to want to show where those new houses or the new commercial areas are going to be.
If there are new houses or new commercial areas, right?
Exactly.
Maybe people don't want new commercial areas.
Precisely.
So the assumption.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Do you want to lose those gorgeous green areas scattered through your town? And have cookie cutter houses put all over them? No, probably not. But you can't, the town's not gonna be static, so where do you want the economic development to go? The town of Charlotte, just to the north of where I live, that's all rich folks, and they want all their development and construction sites to be in the town of Ferrisburg, which is the low-class place to live. So.
Or Charlotte,
That's, what?
or Charlotte in that example.
I didn't want to say that. I used to say that, but yes, so we literally, we are, I mean, it's pretty hysterical, really. So where do you want housing? Where do you want economic development, or don't you want it? And if so, you know, how will your town grow? How will you meet the capital budget plan? All those other good things come into it. Let's see, how are you going to, what public activities are there now in the village area that you'd like to see? A decent, an economic restaurant? I mean, I don't know, there was nowhere for me to have dinner tonight. Yeah, I'm just whining.
Oh, no.
And I'm staying at the Norwich Inn, just to see what it's like.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yes, but it's an interesting experience, there you
Use
go.
Wi-Fi, right?
Well, apart from those things, right, anyway, so what about wastewater? What are you gonna do with sewer? How good is your sewer system in the town center? If you do put in all the commercial things that some people might want or not, how are you gonna deal with it? If you need to expand your school, which you might do because education is what this area is famous for, will you have the sewer and water capacity to make it happen? And if not, where will you go to find it? Can you work with Hartford, for example? What were you gonna do? You're gonna run it across under the river? I don't know. But
Well,
yes. Because you probably don't have good soils necessarily for community septic,
surprisingly, we do,
but aren't they gonna be on the open lands that you want to try to save?
of course,
So,
and varied.
yes. Then I had a question, which is in the town plan. What does resilience planning mean? I mean, I'm not entirely sure what it means. It's in your town plan and you're supposed to be working for it. We can we can think of rivers flooding. But is there more to that? Are there nuances? Stephen, you like this word resilience?
I do, I'm fond of it. I mean, I think we should always plan for natural hazards.
Yes.
You know, I see a future where, wildfire could be a concern in the town of Norwich, considering the amount of forest that we have in a sort of persistent drought condition.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of insecurities that can sort of collect on our resilience.
I mean, we've given the number of hills we have coming into town, people start clear cutting to put houses up, and then the houses that are in the valley are at great risk, or, putting solar fuel on top of a steep slope above of people's houses, that puts people at risk.
Exactly. Very critically important. So you don't want to build them up there, or if you're going to build them up there, you have to consider that. Or not, or just say, no, we can't do that. It's not worth the risk. Or if you want to deal with, consider the fires, where are all your fire ponds? Where are all your dry hydrants? How well do you work with your fire, and emergency services entity? It's a separate municipality here, right?
There's a fire district
Right.
which runs the hydrants and the public water supply, but then the fire department is a volunteer fire department. And quite an active one.
And so I would be asking, how are they functioning together? Do they give adequate protection to all the different areas in the town? If there is a wildfire, do we know literally where? I mean, most towns nowadays, they really don't know where the dry hydrants are. They don't know where the fire ponds are. And there's inadequate communication between the fire folks and the folks that are running the rest of the town.
We are in the process of updating our local hazard mitigation plan, so.
Right, so is your hazard mitigation plan up to date? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I just want to point out to anyone who might be feeling slightly overwhelmed by the list of questions and who's doing what and so forth, and I'll talk to it a little bit, but it is a perfectly legitimate end result of, it will be part of what we put out 8 or 9 months from now, will be these leftover bits, or to be done, or, we gotta work on the zoning regs for this, or
right,
there's this fire district versus town question about sidewalks or water, they're gonna be, part of our job will be identifying work to be done.
correct.
Yeah,
So don't feel like I'm not gonna say that, cause that'll open up the fire district issue, and you don't wanna put that on the table, cause we might have to solve it. We're gonna have, a lot to chew on, but it's gonna be fine to have a list at the end of to-dos.
and that's exactly right. I mean, all plans end with an implementation program, right? This is how we're gonna achieve these goals that we've identified.
I guess I wonder, one question that's not on here that I always find really helpful when you start a conversation like this is, what do we really love about this town? What do we value about this town? What do we want to see preserved regardless of what other things might happen? So kind of where is that in our base? Because I think when you start thinking about this, what do we want to add? What do we want to change? How do we want to fix it? How do we want to do more? What's the economic development? What's the housing? What's this? What do we really cherish about this town? And so that gives us a lens through which you go back and look at how do all the things we're talking about impact it, and Jan and Christian and Stephen knows, but I really prefer the concept of how might this town evolve to become a better version of itself, as opposed to how much growth do we want to have, how much economic development do we want, how much, like this kind of the American idea that you've got to keep growing to be a good place or to be a whatever is.
And that's
is
part of what the
getting
state
to the
is telling us.
challenge. The state is telling us that, but I think in terms
Exactly.
of our conversation is like,
Right.
what do we treasure about this place? I mean, you folks.
And
That's how we
recently
started the meeting. with
Yeah,
the question.
that was our
Sorry.
introduction question.
So, yeah,
They each
and-
described their values so eloquently.
Yeah, and then, but as we go
Yeah.
out and talk with people outside of it, because I think you want to go back and
Ask
round everything in that.
Yeah.
And
You want to build your network.
Well, yeah, it's really, this is all about change management or planning for change, but the core of that is what doesn't change.
Yeah.
What are the precious things that you say, I don't care whether a hurricane force wind comes, this is what we're holding on to for dear life, and everything else can change around it. So identifying those things is really important, and getting this group, as she said, to access your networks. I mean, we reached out to the business community and to historic and so forth because of those networks that were then connected
Yeah.
to each of you.
Right.
And so this is very much a representative body that should be going off and talking to their constituents and bringing it back to us. Yeah.
I would also say one thing to think about too is like the things that you love in the community. There will be change required to keep those things in place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Danowitz, right?
Right.
Like all these other buildings, like, I mean, Danowitz septic is basically failing.
Right.
So like the expense of whoever wants to take that place over and put like the cost of putting a new septic in that place is astronomical.
Astronomical.
So then what happens? Maple Fields comes in and takes over Danowitz.
That's right.
Right? So if you did something like connect septic with Hartford, that takes part of the cost off of,
Yeah.
the next phase for some of these, and this is coming, it's like someone who has a business in a very old building with a
Right.
failing septic also.
Yeah.
It's just, there's costs that could be dealt with from, a municipal standpoint that would allow us to keep some things the way they are currently.
And I think, to Gene's point, that we recognize the challenges to maintain, what our intention. So that's a great point.
I'd also add just similar, just totally different, but similar style is like the new funding formula for the school system in the state of Vermont is based on per capita income in your area and for each school age children. And no shock that Norwich has very few people that get the multiplier, basically to get additional state funding. So we pay like at the absolute extreme per pupil by the state rules. So like one way to offset that would be to change the income mix of the town
Exactly.
and specifically of the school age children in the town. And so like that'd be another thing where it's like, it has a long-term benefit in the school funding formula.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, 2.8% below the poverty in the town of Norwich, which is a tiny number.
So Gene, I'm just looking at time.
I just,
and
one last thing I was gonna do.
You-
So what will be in this final document? At the next meeting, you're gonna be, or between now and then, you'll have done your homework. You will be not assigned, but you might select something what you really want to look into. So the final document will have collected together all your brilliant ideas. And we'll have a section that will be, what is the public outreach we've just done to get to this point, for the RFP? What are the boundaries? And we will discuss that at some depth. What were the conditions passed or, immediately passed? That will be an important point to put in there. So our historic folks can work on that. What are the existing conditions? And that's critical for the present time. And that's your population, economics, housing, environment, land use, infrastructure, roads, utilities, etc., all that stuff. And then what are your goals? I mean, what is it that you really want to have? And this will be a long list, like walkable communities. You know, I don't know, a new restaurant in town, fixing the septic in the town center, whatever those goals are. And along with those will be recommendations, and then implementation will be that last section of the RFP. So it'll be like a draft of what you want this final document to look like. So you'll be giving it as a framework to the consultant group, and it'll have attachments with it. You know, if someone's done a whole lot of work on, I don't know, the water lines or whatever's important, those will be attached as documents to it, and we'll make sure it looks sexy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Great.
back to you.
Thank you. And again, we would definitely keep bouncing it back and forth. I wanna, we wanna stop at 8, so we wanna have time at the end to try and do a little bit of calendar tag so that we have good attendance and enough meetings in the next couple of months. So what I wanted to do was to outline the plan, the work plan, really what does this project look like? What are the phases? And then what does the first phase include? So that as you're thinking through, you know, what's gonna happen when, what does this RFP mean, and who's the consultant, and so forth. So I'm gonna try and do that in the next 10-15 minutes, and then, but again, back and forth is perfectly fine. So really, there are 3 big phases to this, simply put. The first one is project definition and work assignment. So in the next 2 months, say June and July, is when we get our heads around, you know, these examples, and okay, we're gonna do some of this, we're gonna focus on this, but what are the elements? What are the activities? What's the background data? All these things that basically it's a list of all the things that need to be done. And then the work assignment means who's gonna do it. Because when we talk about RFP for consultant, we talk about this group, the steering committee, we talk about the planning commission, and any other volunteers that might pop up if we have a brilliant idea or they do. We will parse out that list to different groups. And I mean, the way I can see it is we get to choose. So we'll make the list. We'll keep the fun, good stuff that we want to do, and we'll give the grunt work to the consultants. And that's part of the fun here. And then one other thing to keep in mind is the planning commission is the decision-making body. I mean, the select board is ultimately the decision-making body, but this is an advisory group to the planning commission. And so when it comes to a policy statement, we should redo zoning so that there are lots more housing in this section of town. This group is not going to decide that sort of policy decision. We may frame 2 or 3 options with the background data and present it to the planning commission and bounce it around in that form. So there are certain groups that will make certain kinds of either decisions or activities, but a lot of it is up to us to say, if somebody's really interested in digging into the background data of traffic, then we won't bother to give it to the consultant because somebody wants to do it. And so that's, I don't want us to feel like our job is just to write up what the consultant's gonna do. Because we get to hold on to what we uniquely can, and really the main purpose of this group is to solicit and engage the public, is to be able to manage, you know, like public forums, talking to your friends, pulling in all these ideas. So whatever we're talking about here, you should be turning around and talking to 5 other people about, and then bringing back to us. So that's something that's what I mean when I say work assignment, and how this RFP is a slice of what's needed. Then the second phase, which is really, it's gonna take some number of months to find said consultant. That's kind of May, summertime. In the fall, we'll have consultant in hand, and the fall is really the block of true public engagement. We've framed the questions, we know what we wanna pull out of people, we won't know the tough stuff that we wanna get talked about. We're gonna do charrettes that the consultant's gonna run. So that's the block in the fall. Develop and implement a public engagement program that tells us what we want this plan to include and say. And then there's the draft, really the drafting, editing, and approval of the village master plan as the third phase. And that's more, you won't get much done in Christmas, so that's kind of January, February, 27. Where, again, the consultant might be drafting us chapters to edit, and then we edit them, and then the planning commission works on them, and then they go to the select board. So that's the three main chunks, and just a little more detail on the first one, because that's what we'll do for the next couple of months here. And probably and we'll talk meeting times, but call it every couple of weeks, because we will have homework, we won't have time to do that, but we want it fresh and we want it to keep momentum. And so I think one of the first things we want to do is talk about the boundary issue and the size of this thing and the satellites and how do we see the center and the satellites, and if Hawk Pine is a residential area without a focal node, does that make sense to even be in here? What about, so Huntley is, yes, but then you get out on the road to the dump and out to it's the transfer station. Is that, in what way is that the same as Route 5 South? Or, McKenna Road and Lewiston? So that, I think, is a very good initial thing to get our heads around. And then again, we're gonna keep this running list of background data and all the different pieces that we wanna get done. And so we can work both ways. We can say, here's what we wanna do, and then we work from the RFP backwards. Here's what we're gonna ask the consultant to do, and fill in those holes. So that we want to be thinking after, say, 3 or 4 more meetings, to be able to have a defined RFP for the consultants. And also have our heads around what this thing's gonna look like and what the real meat of gathering, discussion and all that is gonna be in the fall, sort of, September, October, November. And so what do we need to do to get ready for that?
So if could I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
I just think it's important to pick up on what Mary was saying too, is that we're going to be putting into this document what we don't want them to do. So then there's going to be this list that we don't want you to build on these green spaces. We do want you to try and do X, but we don't want, so that they don't not just waste their time, but force your new consultant people to be creative, because they're often not. And that's why.
Well, and just the idea that came up as an example when we were talking about this, if you did a survey, if you did a town survey, and one of the questions was, are you for or against town septic? Or a public septic in the village center? We've done that before. But that's the wrong question.
Right.
Because it's way too broad and undefined, and to some people that means lots of housing, to others you can't ask it that way. But if you flip it around and you say to the consultants, we want you to look at the soils that we have, the lot sizes we have in the village center, and come back with 3 or 4 different ideas around septic. Oh, you can do Danowitz's under the parking lot if you get the state to let you do septic under the parking lots. And Marion Cross was thinking of looking to Hartford, and then did something else that was a little more innovative that solved the problem for a lot less money. So, but that's a way of using your consultant and forcing them to be creative.
Yes.
Rather than asking a simplistic question to the town that will just get everybody riled up for no good reason. But
Exactly.
yes, we wanna use the consultant, in the best way.
Yeah, you're gonna constrain them and encourage them at the same time. You encourage them to do X, constrain them to do what you don't want them to do.
Mhm. And so I did wanna say a couple things to Stephen's point about, and he was dancing around town government a little bit. We want to use this group and this process to demonstrate how to have a positive, collaborative, town-wide, exercise like this. So this is all open meeting law and an official group. And it's exactly what we want to do. We want to be visible. We want to be transparent. We want to be collaborative. We want people to come in and talk. And so you should feel free, any subset of you, 2 or 3 of you that want to talk about this, you want to talk with your friends, please do that. But we really want to model collaborative, positive town experience. Not, not let's start attacking each other. I want to serve as quickly as possible.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. So that, and I think that's important. It's like I said about the leading into the town plan. We want to practice best practices so that as we go and make it bigger to the whole town plan over the next 2 years, we've demonstrated so that when the townspeople see a notice that says, oh, public forum for the village planning process, they think, oh, that'll be an interesting, fun conversation. I'll go. Rather than, oh my God, that's gonna be a drag. It's just gonna be a slugfest. So just keep that in mind, and we want to start positive and stay positive. That doesn't mean we dance around, ignore the hard questions. So if we have to talk about, is there housing? Where is there housing? What has to give to hold on to something more important? What's our regional responsibility? Or do we just say, oh, stick all the housing in Hartford, they've got public sewer? We want to be able to deal with hard questions without losing that collaborative, positive.
Yeah, and we absolutely have to be open to all points of view.
That's what I was just gonna say that, because I think this kind of can be very narrow.
Yeah.
And how do you ask, is there anyone who would like to propose a different perspective as opposed to letting the narrative just get reinforced and not questioned?
Yeah, so again,
Open points of view.
how do we model that in this group and in this activity, to really help the town be better?
Is there a historical precedent for this type of initiative, or are we breaking new ground?
In the town of Norwich or in this? There have been plenty.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we did the town plan, we did a town plan in 2020.
Well, no, I mean, we do a town plan every
town
8
plan,
years.
Yes, but lots of other smaller studies.
Yeah, and we've tackled
Focus
the
studies.
sewage question, or, there was a massive comprehensive sort of transit study, sort of in the turn of the century. There's lots of prior work. In fact, at our next meeting, I was kind of gonna bring all of that.
Yeah, that's my next question. What learnings can we glean from that, or is it a little bit old?
That's a good question. I think, some things change, some things remain the same, and especially, sort of physical infrastructure questions like septic, right? I mean, the soils are the soils, right? And the systems are the systems. So I think there's probably some value in that 2005 study. Same with the transit studies, they don't really expire. but also points of view change over time, right? You know, there was a, you know, some most recent work was sort of looking at a mixed use area, Route 5 South, which was, you know, valuable work, but, you know, maybe things have moved on since then. So,
How do we think about making sure people know, like, I mean, the planning commission approved accessory dwelling in the downtown,
well,
right? So I
accessory
guess
dwellings
that's like, that's
throughout the
something
state.
that, pardon me?
It's throughout the state.
Well, no, but we changed our, I mean, we recently had a big long discussion, you were there. So, so like to enable that, so I think as we think about like, okay, well, we can do more housing, we do more affordable housing, well, that was a significant, at least opens the door. Because it hadn't been open before to significantly increase housing if people want to do it. It is one up, and then there's many other options, but
Yeah.
to make sure people kind of understand too, what is,
To that point,
yeah.
to your point, Mary, I think what you're talking about was our, you know, when we just recently sort of modernized our land use regulations. Right, and the reason we did that was there was a lot of preemptions in statute where our regulations were just non-compliant.
Right,
You know,
right.
so I think the, you know, the work we did there was to just sort of, okay, we are now current with state law. And the sort of harder questions of land use regulation and, you know, sort of modernizing, renewing them.
No, so let me, I was there, so I understand it, but I think what I'm saying is that we have a downtown that maybe had regulations that weren't up to date, that didn't allow us to do certain things, and so some of those have been updated. And so just to make sure that people, you know, that as we're going around collecting information, I think that's a helpful thing to know. That's been recently discussed and is, you know, is.
Yeah.
A possible solution.
Yeah,
to that.
I think
It's not a solution, it's one alternative to get at a solution.
Right. I mean, I think that we will want to kind of sequence into these things, because some of that I see as more implementation. Say, okay, we want to get, if after we said the goal is to get X number of housing units within this area,
Yeah,
then we'd say, what
Then
are
we
the
have that.
options
That's
for
right.
doing that?
That's
But
right.
we haven't gotten through step one yet.
Right.
To say, what's that goal? If we pull from people and they say that, you know, I want a more vibrant,
yeah,
concentrated village population. I want more people walking around on the streets. I want to be able to support our 2 restaurants and an X number of commercial, you know. But we haven't gotten that message yet. If we get that, then that cascades to, here are some possible methods.
yeah,
So I do think we need in our heads to say, what are those big questions that we gotta pull to get the consensus of the town? And then we do the work to either fine tune what they are and then talk implementation.
yeah. And I you know, in 2020, when we adopted the last town plan, we also adopted a housing strategy along with it. So
We
that's,
should look at those.
you know, that's sort of preceding information that I think you're referring to, that I want to, you know, bring to the group for our next meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I wanna do in the interest of time is to look at next meeting. I think next meeting, we sort of threefold, boundaries, look at the map, figure out how we wanna think about the boundaries. It's start listing really concretely the background data, that we want somebody to answer, maybe us, maybe consultant. And then the plan elements, what are the key elements? And you'll see as you read through the examples, that will help you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
But we wanna know, what are our elements? Because to Gene's point, we may choose to focus this activity on a subset of the total possible.
Yeah,
Cause it is narrow and it's embedded in the whole town plan. So if we choose to focus, fine, we will do the other pieces as part of the full town plan.
yeah. And just to expand on that, when we wrote this grant, we identified 6 sort of thematic elements. Housing, growth, infrastructure, resilience, community building, historic preservation, big buckets. You know, we're not bound by this grant contract to, you know, address each and every one of those elements. We are bound by the grant contract to conduct it in the way that it's laid out in the work plan. So we have to have charrettes. We have to have 2 of them.
We can manage it.
And I, you know, I do think housing infrastructure growth, resilience, historic preservation and community building are important elements that I think that we sort of centered tonight. So, but like the project area, they need refinement. And I think that's important to do early and next.
Yeah. So on the logistics of next meeting, and maybe if we could, I'd love to get, say, a couple meetings scheduled while we're here. And so just to put that in front, and like I said, a couple weeks is probably a good cadence. Just for to keep the momentum. That puts the next target week of 6/22. And I'm assuming evenings. And
The sort of consensus I've heard is evenings are okay, including Amy, Sheridan and Elena.
okay.
Yeah.
Are there absolute no's on days of the week, in general, or preferences? Just to throw out that week is not a planning commission week, but, any preferences? All right, we have an 11-person group. We're never gonna get everybody happy. But if we can get, a core, attendance, then we can keep things moving.
Thursdays are bad for me.
Thursdays, okay?
I'm generally flexible. So,
We try to book you every Wednesday, I thought.
Where would the meetings be held?
I would love to have them here, but it's a complicated space.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So,
It's
you
booked
know,
almost every
we
night,
might have to face the brutal realities of Tracy Hall.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to. I think we're gonna have enough constraints that we can't do forcing it to be here. And
We
I'd
would
love
love
in
to
the
be.
fall to be doing it at French.
Yeah, we might be available for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just talking 3 or 4 meetings here.
Yeah.
And we'll catch as catch can, whether that's a room at the Historic Society or Tracy Hall, we'll figure that out. So I'd
I think
rather.
the simple answer is Tracy Hall for a group of this size.
Yeah.
The kitchen at the Historical Society is good for about 8,
We have Zoom access.
always.
We will have, yeah, this is an advisory group that will have hybrid meetings as a matter of course and recorded, and we will do notes, minutes and post things, mostly because that's the right thing to do to get as much participation as possible. It happens to be necessary for OML reasons, but we want to do it because whoever wasn't here and was interested will see the notes. That'll remind them to go look at the recording, and great, that's what we want.
And we recorded tonight?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, this group's not taking action, right? So we're not making motions so, you know, we can be, as long as we're conducting our business in the open, I think we're okay. But we're not gonna be taking any formal motions. We don't have to elect a chair. We don't have to.
No, we're not doing
You know.
quorum because we don't do, you have to, as a group, as a town group, then you need a quorum to have a meeting. That's sort of official legality. We have a big enough group with 11 members that, you know, we should be able to rustle up 6 or 7 of us that can show up. And so that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Is the prospect of meeting in a private home open?
As long as you're willing to have, the public come in.
Yeah, it has to be open to the public. It's not just this group.
So it's
Yeah.
gonna be at
And it
least
has to-
12 and maybe X number
I mean,
more.
who knows, this might get to be the gig to go to, this may, he is all in. So-
And
with our positivity. Exactly,
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't shoot for that, I mean, I think that would be a great thing to do with focal groups in the fall. Oh, we wanna talk about the
Okay.
traffic issue, or the school thing, or this, there's some focal issue where 3 or 4 people from this group are meeting in a home to talk about this with the neighbors or the people interested in that topic.
Yeah.
You know, then that seems to be a good venue.
But I sort of thought about that with the select board and boys that are pie in the sky, but to get out in the community, what's more public than that?
In the bandstands.
It's summer, come on.
Yeah.
It's
So,
it's very
how,
nice.
so we got Monday, let me just throw something out. We got Monday, the 22nd, Tuesday, the 23rd. Do I hear any definite nays, yays?
Tonight was this, can we do 6:30 start?
Yes,
Cause, okay, I know that was
Yeah, that was-
very
that
tight
was
with
good
work
for
and
Sarah.
pickup and all the kids.
we just wanted Sarah to have
Yeah.
a time before and still have some time here.
So I'm a yay for the 22nd.
23rd.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
23rd.
Oh, 23rd, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Of June,
I'm a yay for that too.
I'll be out of town, but you guys will survive.
But what about Monday?
I'm gone the 20th to the 27th.
Well, we'll just stack up
Yeah,
your.
we're checking.
It's fine.
So which day are we going for? The 23rd?
Tuesday, the 23rd.
At 6:30?
6:30, Stephen will find a place.
Tracy Hall. I,
Okay.
assuming that Tracy Hall is open, I think it is, I'll check.
Yeah.
What about the
But
school? Any meetings, no meetings at the school? Maybe?
we could,
Summertime is a lot easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never done that, so I'd have to sort of figure it out, but I'm sure they have
In the multi.
space. What's that?
In the multi?
Do there or the gym.
Oh,
Let's-
it's multi,
Yeah, let's leave that to Stephen, and we can.
Okay.
we can-
Yeah, I'll
we
figure
will
out
tell
the
you where
place.
it is when we post the meeting.
yeah,
Can we try for another one, the week after, say, 4th of July? So the week of the 7th of July, just to pack it in here so that.
I'm out of town that week, but again, summer.
Yeah, what's what?
yeah.
So the 7th?
Tuesday, the 7th is not the second Tuesday, so it's not planning commission. Tuesday, the 7th? Okay, let's block those. Tell Stephen, if you can tell, we'll put it in the notes.
Yeah.
So that anybody that isn't here, has those blocked.
And 2 hours?
I think 6:30 to 8 is probably a better target. If we're gonna be fun,
Yeah.
we'll get a lot less fun after 8, I think.
Yeah, I'm 1 minute past fun right now.
Any other questions, thoughts?
What do you think? Do you think it's a good idea, what we're doing?
I think it's great stuff.
Yeah,
Great.
all right. We haven't lost anyone there. This is good.
Early days.
They haven't
Left
left,
it.
they haven't left. They didn't need it.
Yeah.
People.
That's a lot. If they come back to the next.
I'd be settler, boss. I say that.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm glad.
You should just go.
Yeah.
No, the floors have gone
What's that?
upstairs and last week, the kitchen's.
I think it's fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun at this point. I think the challenge is to sort of.
Yes,
cut
David.
around the end.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah.
And that's the, you can dive into detail.